blood so important in our body? And this blood is generated by bone marrow. So what's important is you need to know about bone marrow, a lot of other things related to blood, because blood is the main stream that you need to function your health properly. So bone marrow, this is spongy tissue, soft tissue, a kind of tissue that's available, that's found in certain large bones. If you talk about a child, it has, that is femur bone, the largest bone. So you have the spongy tissue inside the center of femur bone, thigh bone of a child, and there you have bone marrow, and that will generate blood cells. And if you are an adult, you have different other parts of your body. There you have bone marrow. So the skull bones, you have the heart bones, rib cage bones, and you have hip bones, ilium, hip bones, and you also have femur, that is thigh bone. There you have in the center of the bones, you have spongy tissue, and that's bone marrow, and that will generate the necessary amount of cells. In our body, we have 40 trillion cells. 40 trillion, that means 4,000 billion cells. And among them, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. So these three things are inside the blood. And these are under the care, the power of bone marrow. So bone marrow will generate red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, right? And the total number of cells in your body is 40 trillion, 40,000 billion cells. So to take care of the bones, whether they are being generated by bone marrow, is very important. So spongy tissue is bone marrow, and it's available, it's inside the large bones, and you need to have certain amount of red blood cells. Why? Because you need oxygen all parts of your body. How can you get all the oxygen in all parts of your body? With the help of hemoglobin. Inside red blood cell, the oxygen is taken and gone to all parts of our body with vitamins and minerals. So oxygen is vital. Oxygen is essential. If you do not have sufficient amount of oxygen, then you cannot live, at least in peace. So you need to have proper amount of bone marrow, proper function of bone marrow. And another blood cell, that is white blood cell. If you do not have sufficient amount of white blood cells, how can you protect yourself from viruses, bacteria, antigen, fungi? You cannot. So you have to have certain number of white blood cells, and that's been under the control of spongy tissue, bone marrow. And when it starts bleeding, what will happen? How can you protect the blood from getting outside? So you have a cut and the bleeding starts. You have an accident, the bleeding starts. And a childbirth situation, sometimes a vein is cut or whatever happens. So what happens? The blood will get out of your body internally or outwardly. So this bone marrow has produced a certain number of platelets, that is from 150,000 to 450,000. If you have very little, then your blood will not stop bleeding. And if you have many more, then you will have heart attack. You will have no oxygen in your body because thick blood will not get into all the parts of your body. So bone marrow is essential. Bone marrow will generate certain number of platelets, certain number of white blood cells, certain number of red blood cells. And if you have problem with bone marrow, then it may not generate the number of these cells, or it may over-generate. If you have cancer, then a lot of white blood cells will be produced by bone marrow to attack the cancerous elements, right? So bone marrow is in your inside your bones, large bones in a child, that is femur thigh bone. In adults, in femur thigh cell, no problem. In hip, that is ilium. And you have in scalp bones, you have in rib bones. The thing is that is very necessary to know. When you go to a doctor, he administers you to have CBC, complete blood count. It means how many blood cells, how many red blood cells, how many white blood cells, how many platelets, like this. So if you have problem, then you will develop a lot of complications. You may develop cancer like leukemia. You can have several other cancers. You will have shortage of oxygen, right? Why? Because you do not have sufficient amount of red blood cell, you do not have sufficient amount of hemoglobin, then your oxygen will not get inside all parts of our body. So bone marrow is essential and it's very easy to understand. Probably you have understood all. If you have, then please let me know. And if you have any queries, then let us know. Thank you.